Welcome to AKS Lab number 2. I'm an Azure Administrator as well as an Azure Solutions Architect. In this lab, we will create a new resource group, configure cluster networking, create an Azure Kubernetes Cluster, connect to the Kubernetes Cluster, and create a Kubernetes namespace. Let's go. Hey, welcome to another video, and this is going to be a very exciting series, I believe. It's going to extend on my previous Azure Kubernetes video by extending it one more step. I would consider this video to be in the moderate to slightly advanced stage. But what you see in front of you is the application architecture of what we're going to create using AKS. We're going to focus on, in this video, we're going to focus on using AKS to deploy a Kubernetes cluster. Video 2 of this series will be configure an Azure Container Registry to store application container images, and you can see each step up there is labeled with a green circle. And then step 3 will be actually deploying the 3 rating application components. Then you broken down to A, B, and C. And then you see there's a 4, a 5, a 6, and a 7, and those will be discussed in part 2 of the series. But part 1 will consist of videos 1, 2, and 3, or steps 1, 2, and 3. Okay, the first thing we need to do is create our resource group and resources. Now we can do it via the AZ command or the command line, and that's how I create the cluster in my first series of AKS. But this time I'm going to show the command line way, but actually do it via the portal. I think it's somewhat useful to know how to do some things through the portal, and the portal gives you a little more options to easier to understand what's going on. So if you want, this is my settings I'm going to use. I'm going to use region East US 2. I'm going to create a resource group called AKS Lab 2. I'm going to create a subnet name and the VNet name. And this is the command line way to do it here. And I'll bring this over so you can see. What I'll do is I'll come here and I'll create a break. Just know that this is one complete line. So if you're going to copy it verbatim, just make sure you see this as one complete line. All right, so let's get to the portal. And also might be worth noting, if you don't have you could also use the Azure Cloud Shell to do all these commands. What I mean by that is clicking here waiting for it to connect. And you can do all these commands under PowerShell or Bash. I suggest if you're going to do everything in this lab, this whole series, just start using Bash from the beginning. So you can do it this way, or you can do it via, I set up PowerShell here along with all the other necessary modules you need to manage Kubernetes. Okay, so let's get started here. And we're going to use the portal for this first step. I'm going to close this so I have a little more screen. I'm going to create a resource group. Add. I think I said I was going to call it AKS Lab 2. And we're going to put it in East US 2. That's all there is to it. And we'll go to our resource group. All right, the next thing we need to do is create a VNet. So virtual network, create, and that's our right resource group. And the name, this needs to be changed to East US 2, and the name is going to be AKS2 Lab VNet. And our subnet name, we're going to add one. And that name is going to be, oh, let's make this AKS Lab 2. Somehow we lost that. And a virtual network space. We're going to change this a little bit to 172.16.0.0/24 and make this 172.16. Oh, we want this to be 16. Oh, we gotta get rid of this one. And we want this to be 16. There we go. And then our subnet will be 172.16.1.0/ we'll just do 24. We don't need to get fancy. Okay, I had to cancel out and come back in. So let me just cancel out. Make sure there's a green check mark here. Add subnet. Paste in the name. And then 172.16.1.0/24. And say OK. Security, we'll just keep all as the defaults, the tags, view and create. Somewhere we're missing information. Let's look at the basics. Looks good there. Subnet should have at least one IP6 range. Well, that's new. How about that? Okay, that should do it. Create. Okay, here we are in our resource group. Let's refresh. And we have our VNet. So looking pretty. I think we're ready to create our cluster. So let's click add. Can I just type AKS? I can, and I'll just choose Kubernetes Service. Say create. And got our correct resource group name, which is excellent. Our cluster name will be, did I define that anywhere? No. Okay. So let's call it AKS Lab 2 CLU cluster. That looks good. East US 2. And here's the versions. And notice you can choose from many different versions. I'm just going to choose the default one. Notice there's 2 versions ahead of us. Then there's 19 in preview. And I believe Kubernetes comes out with a new version like every 3 months. And it's going to do a node count of 3 for us. I believe we only want 2. Let me check the documentation here. Yes, we only need 2 nodes for this scenario. And so we'll go to next, node pools. And we're going to have Linux machines, and it's going to choose this for us, which is fine. These are not terribly expensive VMs. Virtual nodes disabled. Scale sets are enabled. This gives us nice, notice here, enabling VM scale sets. We create a cluster that uses VM scale sets instead of individual virtual machines for cluster nodes. VM scale sets are required for scenarios including auto scaling, multiple node pools, and Windows support. The one we really care about of all these 3 settings is this one here, the auto scaling. That's going to be our last series. So if some reason you don't want to do a scale set, you won't be able to do the very last one, but all the other stuff should work out for you. But we're going to do a scale set. Authentication. Service principal, it could create one for you automatically or use a system assigned one. You could create a new service principal or use a system assigned managed identity. I'm going to go with a service principal, and I already have one, so I'm going to say configure service principal. Use existing. And I'm going to go get that information. All right, I got my information typed in. I'm going to say OK. And role-based, yes, we want to use that. AKS manage Azure Active Directory, we're going to say no. Encryption type, we'll leave that as a default. Networking. We're going to go to advanced. Our network, we're going to pick as AKS Lab 2 VNets. And it picked our correct subnets. And Kubernetes address service range. So we're going to change that to 172.16.2.0/24. And then this is a certain address. So 172.16.2.250. All right. So basically this has to be a different subnet than this one, and this has to be an IP address in this subnet. And this is the Docker bridge address. It created it for us, so we're going to leave it the way it is. Network policy, we're going to go with Azure and leave everything there. And let's go to integrations. Container monitoring is enabled. Log Analytics workspace, sure. We'll stick in our Docker VM. This is a workspace I already have created, so I'm going to throw it in there. If you want to create a new one, feel free, or not have one at all. That's an option, I believe. Yeah, disabled here, and that would do it. And Azure policy is disabled. Review and create. Let's take a look at what we have here. We got a resource group of AKS Lab 2 in the East US2 region with our name, our version, one node pool. Virtual nodes are disabled. Scale sets, yes. We're going to use an authentication method of the service principal. We have RBAC enabled. We got some encryption going on. Here is our network configuration is considered advanced. Our VNet, our subnet, our values of our VNet and subnets. Load balancer standard. I think everything looks pretty good. So we'll say create. I believe this takes anywhere between 4 minutes and 7 minutes, depending on your computer. So I'm going to go ahead and cancel. I'm going to pause the video. Here's what my screen looks like after about a minute or two. Okay, it looks like mine was successful. So I'm going to click here and go to my resource group. And do a refresh. All right, let's just say for fun, you wanted to know what network settings you chose for your deployment. One way to do that would be to go to properties on your cluster resource. Oh, let me go back to here. I'm back at my resource group. Click on the cluster resource, the actual cluster. Nope, I'm going to change my mind again on that. Go back to the resource group, choose deployments, and then choose Microsoft.AKS. Then choose, I believe it's inputs, but I might change my mind and say it's outputs. But I'm going with inputs. And you can see here's all your inputs you did. And we're doing max pos of 30. We didn't know that. And if we come scrolling down still, here we go. So here was our network policy. We did a 172.16 for the service CDR, and then the DNS service IP. So this was done via the portal. And if you wanted to do the command line, here is our previous statement. Then here is the statement to create the cluster. And again, wherever you see this, that's a same line. So it should read like this. See what I'm saying? Make it one line. Another thing that you might find useful is you can, if you're using the Cloud Shell, you could make that, if you're dealing with the Cloud Shell, you only have like maybe part of the screen. You can have the full Cloud Shell. I don't remember the URL, so let's Google that. I'm gonna say I don't think you can see what I'm typing, but I'm just typing in Google. Let me go to Google. Let's see if I could. All right, now you can probably see what I'm going to type. Let's say Azure Cloud Shell URL. Oh, here it is. Yes. How to access? No. Nothing ever goes right when you don't. Let's see, this will tell us. There you go. Yes. shellazure.com. So you just take that. I'm just going to type, you can't see this, but I'm typing that right into my browser. And then it's kind of cool. You're asked what subscription you want. And I'm going to choose this one. And I have a full cloud shell that I can use. And if you have two monitors, it's even groovier, right? You could have this on one machine looking at something else, but I might go back. I'll be going back and forth just to compare the two as we go on. But going back, minimizing this, and back at my cluster. There we go. All right. So I have my cluster created. Now let's see if we can connect to our AKS cluster from our command line interface. So I'm using the PowerShell ISE for this. If you're using Cloud Shell, that'll should work as well. I think I'll demo both. So first you want to do is you're in your PowerShell ISE, you need to connect to your subscription. And I think the easiest way to do that is go to the portal, click connect, and just do a copy paste. So this will set my subscription. Run that command. Oh, I lost my toolbar. View, show toolbar. Oh, okay, I can't live without my toolbar. All right, so there I am. And then next, go back to my portal, and I'm going to go connect to my cluster. All right, and if you're doing this via the Cloud Shell, just make sure you're in Bash. This should work even if you're in PowerShell, but for the whole series, just choose Bash, and you just do the same exact thing, copying and pasting in, and you should be connected. All right, so let's run our very first command, and that would be kubectl get nodes. And how many nodes should that return for us? If you said 2, you are correct. So let's see what happens. And there we are. We have our 2 nodes. And if you want to compare that in the portal, let's go back to our portal, close that out. And if you go to node pools, you'll see you got a count of 2. Tells you what machine is your size you're running, what version of Kubernetes you're running. Click on the 2, you can see you can scale, and I could change that to 4. Now I get 4 nodes, but that's a future video. But you notice you don't see the names. You would think as you click here, you might see the names of those nodes like we do here. Well, to see that in the portal, you have to go back to your resource group. And if I do a refresh, nope, I take that back. It created a resource group that you don't know the name of. And it starts with an MC usually. Let me go back to resource groups. And here it is. If we go to this resource group and click on virtual machine scale set, wait a little bit. You know, you get some grasp. We'll look at this stuff in another video as well. But we came here to see, we can see our names of our nodes. And this looks like it's a little out of date, because if you look at here, it says it's ready. And the names 224, they're in that agent pool 0. Same agent pool, but one's called 0, one's called 1. If I do a refresh here, well, it still says starting. That's interesting. Now, I actually say I've never seen that before, where that says starting, that says ready. I think that's just a problem. It just hasn't come back. Well, here's our VMs. I'm not sure what's here is, but let's click here, see what happens. This is interesting. Running. And as you want to save money, you could stop these 2 nodes, and they'll save you some money if you're not using, if you're not doing the lab currently. So that's what I'm going to do. When we get done with this video, I'm going to shut these down so I can save some money. If I go, this one says running, 1 more. I don't know what that says. Info good. That's the interesting extensions. All right. That looks good. So now let's go back to here. Let's click on this one. It says running. And it's got CPU. So I think it's okay. Connect. Well, I didn't know you could do that. Looks like you connect right to the node. We'll have to check into that in another lab. All right. Well, there's the IP address, private. That's interesting. They actually... I'm going to see this. I wonder if I could... oh, it's a private, so it's going to be... I need to correct a VPN connection to it. But we'll look into this, see what happens. All right, so... I digressed a little bit. Sorry about that. But some kind of cool stuff to look at here. All right, so... all right, let's look at one other thing before we go. We're going to go back to our main resource group, the resource group where the cluster is in. Go to our cluster. And I believe if we look at services, nope, I want namespaces. Notice we have a default namespace, a kube node lease, kube public, and a kube system. And that's what's the command line way to see that, you might be asking. Well, I'm going to clear the screen here. One thing nice about using the ISE is you get a list of all the commands you used through the session. So we're going to say kubectl get namespace. I guess you got to spell cube. You got to spell this right. Kubectl get namespace. And you see we got the same exact namespaces. that we have here as well. So that's pretty good. Now for our next lab, if you remember the picture, we have several namespaces. We have one called ratings app, as you can see right here. So we need to create another namespace called ratings app. So that'd be not really oops, I want to type that up here. kubectl create name space ratings app. And there we go. So that's pretty good. Well, this is the end of our first lab of the series. Hope you found it good. I think it was a good lab myself. Very few issues occurred, which is always great. All right, well, thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you guys later.